Testing. Hey, folks, as you come in, we want to encourage you to sit towards the middle or the north side so that as people come in later, they can come in this side or come in from the back. So this north crowd is looking good. This is a good-looking north part of the congregation. So try to migrate towards the north end or towards the front. We want to make as much space available for people as they come in later. Hey, folks, go ahead and come on in, take a seat. I really appreciate all you folks here on the north end to free up a little bit of space on this end. But go ahead and take a seat. We're going to get started in 1 minute. 1 minute. So find your spot, and we're looking forward to this morning.
Good morning. Oh, there we go. He said 1 minute, but we're going to get started because I'm excited. So as we kick off our Faith Forum today, I want to remind you of what this day is about. So the purpose of Faith Forum is to have a safe space to have open conversation about relevant topics. So that's our focus for today. As we begin our time together, I would like to share a prayer from Every Moment Holy. Will you pray with me? Accomplish your purposes among us, O God. Tune our hearts to the voice of your Spirit. O Father, enlarge our hearts. O Spirit, expand our vision. O Christ, establish your kingdom among us. Be at work even now, O Lord. May your will in us in these hours be accomplished. Amen. So our topic today is the shape of joy, and our guest leading us through our session is Dr. Richard Beck. Richard is the professor of psychology and senior fellow of the Saunders Center for Joy and Human Flourishing at Abilene Christian University. He's the author of 8 books, most recently, The Shape of Joy. Richard also serves as a prison chaplain at the Maximum Security French Robertson Unit in Abilene, and he writes and speaks widely about the experiences with the incarcerated. So let's begin session 1. Richard, if you'll go ahead and come up, let's welcome Dr. Beck.
Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. And thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here with all of you to talk about the shape of joy. Let me give you a storyboard for the day because there's going to be a sequence to it. This is the sad session because we're going to be leaning into kind of like the problem. You know, what's going on. So the backdrop of this conversation about the shape of joy is our current mental health crisis. I don't probably need to walk through those statistics. I'm sure you're aware that we're in the middle of a spike in a lot of indicators that we're not doing very well. If you just look in the mirror, you probably know that story already. Increasing rates of anxiety and depression, increasing rates of suicide, drug overdoses. Mick and I were talking with Hannah just a little bit ago about the epidemic of loneliness in our culture as well. So that's the backdrop of the conversation about joys, this mental health crisis. So today I want to talk a little bit about why our mental health seems so fragile, and that'll be the kind of the presenting problem. In the sermon, we'll start turning to good news, as a sermon should proclaim. And then after we kind of do the good news, at the lunch session, we will talk about more practical things, so things that we can do in our lives to kind of practice our way towards joy. Okay, that's the plan. All right. So, in my book, The Shape of Joy, I start off a chapter. If anybody's read it, and the title of the chapter is the worst graduation speech, and it's called the worst graduation speech because in 2019 I was invited to give the commencement address at my son's high school graduation. And if you've been to a commencement, you know how those talks are supposed to go. You're supposed to look at these very ambitious and talented and eager and hopeful young people and just put some wind in their sails, right? You're supposed to say, you guys are amazing, you're awesome, you can dream big dreams, and you can do anything you want to do, right? You guys have been to commencement addresses? Okay. Mine was not that. I got up there and I said to this graduating class, I said, class of 2019, when you go to a commencement address, you hear that you're supposed to follow your dreams. and you can realize your dreams, right? Shoot for the stars. And I said, but I'm not here to tell you that. Because if the psychological research is to be believed, your dreams will make you unhappy. So I said, so I'm here, class of 2019, to tell you, do not follow your dreams. Okay? And that was a very worried audience. For about 30 seconds, they were really worried about where I was about to go, right? Don't follow your dreams. And the point I wanted to make, and I'll come back to that issue about, how we selected our dreams really well. I'll come back to that in a minute. The point I wanted to make listen, nobody really needs to have a conversation about joy on the day your dreams come true. You don't need any advice. You don't need any help. Nobody has any real concerns the day your dreams come true. Because the day your dreams come true, that's a great day. That's an amazing day. We will be celebrating. You'll be thrilled. You'll be happy. If all of our dreams come true, does anybody need to have any conversations about our mental health crisis? No, that's a great day. So I said, class of 2019, I'm not interested in the best day of your life. Because on the best day of your life, the day your dreams come true, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I said, what I'm actually interested in for a conversation about joy is the worst day of your life. Because I think that's the issue about our mental health. On the worst day of your life, who are you? The day your dreams die, where do you turn? When everything you've so carefully planned and worked for falls apart, what move do you make on that day? Because I believe that is the day, that trial of the worst day of your life, that'll be your moment of truth, right? That'll be the location where the question of reaching for a joy that is hard to locate on that day. Can you find it? Can you locate it? So who are you on the worst day of your life? That's the question I want to put before us today. Did I tell you this is the sad session? Because some of you have already been through that day, haven't you? You've been through the worst day of your life. You had a 24 hours where you did not know what you were going to do, or where you were going to turn, or what was going to happen tomorrow. Some of you have been through that. Some of you are young, and you haven't yet had that day. But it's out in front of you. And we don't know when it's going to happen, but it's coming. And everybody's going to have, I can guarantee that, everybody in the room will have a worse day. And so I want to talk about joy on the worst day. Because that's, as I said in the video to you to set up this conversation, that's the joy regardless. The joy regardless of what brought us to that worst day of our lives. So that's what I want to talk about. Okay. So what are some problems with our mental health that don't set us up very well for resiliency when life gets difficult? And some of it is going to boil down to definitions. So in my discipline of psychology, there's actually a debate about what joy is. Some psychologists would just define joy as a positive emotional state. Joy is happiness, joy is pleasure, joy is the good life, the pleasant life. Joy is just a positive response or a positive emotion to life. And so there's lots of things that bring us joy. I am in a center of joy, and people will ask me, let's do something joyful. And we can all do that. Let's go out, have some fun. Let's gather with the family. Let's go out, see a movie. Let's do something and that give the dog a walk. Lots of things bring us joy. And that's a joy in response to something that's pleasant and pleasurable and makes us happy, okay? And so that's not the joy I'm going to be talking about in the sermon or this afternoon. I want to talk about, instead of joy as pleasure or joy as happiness, I want to talk about joy as something transcendent, the joy regardless of life circumstance. So there's a debate in the field between, is joy just a positive feeling, like happiness, Or is it something a little different, that it's something that we can even experience a positive emotion on the worst day of our life? What's the difference between those two different kinds of emotions? So I want to talk first about this, in this session, about joy as, I would describe as a hedonic view of happiness. Sorry for that big word, but you know where the word like hedonism comes from. So there's a hedonic view of joy, which is basically the pleasant life, the happy life, the pleasurable life, okay? And a lot of people are pursuing joy in this hedonic, happy, pleasure, pleasant-filled kind of way. And I want to talk a little bit about why that pursuit of joy, a hedonic joy, has become fragile and has not set us up very good for a mental health conversation. So let me give you like 4 or 5 reasons this morning about why joy as happiness, joy as pleasure, joy as pleasantness, the happy life, is precarious and fragilizes our mental health. So the first one is what is called affective forecasting errors. So remember when I said to this graduating class, if the research is to believe, we are not very good at picking the things in our lives that will make us happy. And psychologists call that an affective forecasting error. Affective in psychology is just feelings, emotions. So these are emotional forecasting errors, right? What do we mean by that? You're my students, they're choosing a major. What do they want to be when they grow up? And they stand at a fork in the road about some future life, some future happiness, and they have to make a forecast. If I go to the right, I will be happy. If I go to the left, I will be sad. And so they choose going to the right. They're forecasting what will make them happy. We all face these decisions. If I give, psychologists have studied this. If you give somebody $100, what are you going to spend it on? If I give my students $100, what are they going to spend it on? They will often spend it on things that are actually not going to make them durably happy. They predict, if I use the money this way, I'll be happier, and they actually make some bad choices. So affective forecasting errors have been, psychologists have noticed this, that we're just not actually very good at picking our dreams. Like we can pursue what we think will make us joyful, only to arrive at that destination and feel a little let down. I have a good friend who was a pulmonary doctor, pursued med school, wanted to be a doctor, became a pulmonary specialist, and was very wealthy, but also very, very unhappy. And so sometime back in college, he made an affective forecasting error. He sat there and thought, I'm going to be a doctor. I see that lifestyle. I see the material abundance, and that's going to make me happy. And so he made a choice, and he got there, and he hated it, and was very sad and unhappy for quite some time because he felt like he just made the wrong turn at that particular fork in the road. These can be big decisions, like how to spend $100, but it could be big vocational decisions. I just really made a wrong turn at that point. Please don't look at your spouse right now and say, I think I made an affective forecasting error in this situation. Right? And by the way, this is why a lot of our young people are so anxious. When I talk to my young people at ACU, they get it. They understand that they're hazarding some dreams about life and vocation and marriage, and they realize that they feel like they're walking along a very precarious tightrope towards joy. That one bad decision, one wrong decision can really not work out very well, and they're paralyzed by those choices as they sit in my office figuring out what to major in. They realize that it's a pretty high-stakes decision that they're making. So that's one reason that I was telling those students, don't follow your dreams. Of course, I didn't really mean it that way. I'm just saying sometimes we We reach a pinnacle of success or get to some point that we've been striving for our whole lives and get there and realize, this wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. For example, I teach statistics at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm an experimental psychologist. I'm a researcher. So I'm given statistics to teach, okay? Not the fun psychology classes. I teach statistics at 8 a.m., okay? And that's not a happy group of people at that. They don't want to be there. You know, they're aspiring mental health professionals, you know, but they're forced, they're required to take this course, and it's at 8 o'clock, you know, and it's on the third floor of a building, and some on that climb up, they just want to give up, right? They just want to turn around and give up, you know, and so I've taught that class for over 25 years, you know, and do I get joy out of that? You know, there is a routine that settles in for some of our jobs. There was a flush of enjoyment and excitement, but think about your jobs. You know, after year 5, year 10, year 20, year 30, a sort of, you know, it gets a little tiresome, a little fatiguing. And that brings me to my second reason, which is called the hedonic treadmill. Has anybody heard of this? The hedonic treadmill is you're chasing joy, you're chasing happiness, and you can't ever get very far. You're running in place. You're on a treadmill. And it's due to the fact that a lot of the things, if we're pursuing joy as like pleasure or happiness or success or something just fun to do, that you will have a flush of enthusiasm, a flush of joy. But how long does that last, everybody? Not very long. You're going to eventually swing back to that baseline of being like dissatisfied. And again, this goes from big to, I was talking about, you know, the hedonic treadmill of my job. You know, after 20 years of doing the same job, you know, it doesn't give you the same enjoyment that it used to. But it's also in small kinds of things as well. We know this. Like if you ate your favorite food all the time, it would eventually not bring you as much pleasure. I raised 2 sons, and whenever a new video game would come out, those were like the best. That was the best week of my life, because I wouldn't see my son for 7 days. You know, I'd get a new video game, and you're like, "See you later." They just go in their room, and they'd be like, "Where is he? New video game." He's trying to climb the levels. I don't know what they're doing in there, but they're you know, having a good time. You know, but after they get through that game, the hedonic treadmill, you come back. Now you're waiting for the next game. We always kind of come back to that steady state. And if your steady state isn't good or happy, right? If your baseline is a constant unsatisfactory restlessness, then what we discover is that we're not durably joyful. We are rather chronically restless, chronically unhappy, chronically craving the next excitement or the next thing. So that's the second thing. So one of the reasons why joy is elusive, we make affective forecasting errors. Sometimes we just don't pick the thing that's really going to make us durably joyful. Second thing is, even if you get there, you'll quickly go back to your baseline. You're going to be on that treadmill, and you're going to come back to that steady state, wherever that is. Like my students, they come to Abilene. Have you guys ever been to Abilene? It's a beautiful town. You know, and my students, you know, will get here and they're like, you know what my problem is? You know why I'm so unhappy? This town. And I'm like, it's not. Because you're going to go to some other town, and it might give you that flat, like, you'll move to Amarillo, a big town, you know, and, you know, you're going to go to Austin or where, you know, but you're going to settle in the hedonic treadmill. That unhappy feeling that you have, it's going to come back, okay? You might make some changes, but you'll quickly come back to that baseline of unhappiness your whole life. If you think a change of scenery will fix that kind of durable dissatisfaction that you're experiencing in your life. And so a lot of us, we just chase joy by changing circumstances, changing jobs, hunting for something like pretty elusive. Okay, third thing that makes us vulnerable from a mental health perspective is, and this is big for my students, and even if you are past this, so some of us are a little older, okay? So I don't want us to be grumpy about this generation. Does that make sense? That's not a good look. To be like the angry person in the front yard, like, get off my lawn, you young people, don't. So if I'm going to say something generationally here, I want you to hear this as an insight into not generational grievance, but a way to evangelize a young cohort that is struggling with mental health issues. Does this make sense? So let's not weaponize like kids are on their phones too much. Does it make sense? If we do that, if we look at kids on their phones and go like, kids today are too much on their phones, or that is ugly. It's mean. It's not an attractive Christianity, okay? It's true that those things are issues, but we need to kind of get to the spiritual, we have to be soul doctors. You hear me? We have to diagnose what's going on and then be able to speak in compelling ways to a younger generation that has their generational challenges out in front of them, okay? So this third thing is probably more focused on the younger generation. So if you're older and it doesn't apply to you, listen to this as a way to speak into the soul ache of a younger generation, okay? And so this is the third thing. If we lack a compelling life story, and I'm going to talk about this more later, right? If you aren't here on this planet living your life without a kind of a big story, and by big story I mean like something compelling, adventurous, heroic, that you matter, and you're here for a reason, and you are taking place in a very grand drama, okay? If you lack that, just the other day, this was a question on one of my tests, and one of the ways I try to describe this to my college students is that if you're not living in a two-dimensional life, then you become a one-dimensional person. And what I mean by a one-dimensional person is if you don't have anything, by two-dimensional, if you don't have any like sense of a higher calling, does it make sense? Like a vertical or a sort of deeper grounding. So that's that horizontal. That gives you your second dimension. If you're not grounded in a deep story or a deep identity, or you don't feel like your life is navigating by a higher purpose or a higher calling or living into a more transcendent story, right? If the depth and the height is evacuated, if it's lacking, then your life becomes flat and one-dimensional. You tracking with me? And what I tell my students is like, when you are living a one-dimensional story, right, there's nothing compelling above you, and there's nothing grounding you with like deep roots beneath you. You're just this flat, horizontal, one-dimensional person, okay? And when the culture gets you there, one-dimensionally, that's exactly where it wants you. Because Amazon is here to sell you something, okay? Or, right, the culture wants you, godless and unhappy. Okay? Because when you're godless and unhappy, and by godless I mean, lacking depth or lacking height, like lacking a compelling narrative, then what do you look forward to? Okay? What are you going to look forward to? Well, for my sons, it was the next video game release. Does that make sense? Like, if I got nothing compelling in my life, nothing deep, nothing high, then what am I going to look forward to next week? It's going to be, a new video game is releasing. So somebody needs me in that state of unhappy dissatisfaction because there'll be a product there to buy or an experience. Okay? By experiences, like, what are we looking forward to? And some of us, it might be a football game, maybe today, what are we looking forward to? Not this. This is lame. But, the Cowboys are playing it too, right? That's compelling. I look forward to getting out of this to get to the game, okay? Or I'm looking forward to, Friday, because that's when my golfing tee time is scheduled. Or I'm looking forward to, how many of you guys, I'm really bad at this, how many of you guys, what you look forward to is a package being delivered? How many of you guys obsessively just watch the tracking number of your package, Like, oh, I'm excited. It's in Dallas, and it's going to be delivered by, that tracking has been the worst thing in my mental health ever. Like, it used to be like, who knows? But now I can literally follow the package, and I'm just looking forward to this package. Are you tracking with what I'm trying to say here? That when we lack a compelling, transcendent narrative, the third reason why we're unhappy is because it makes us vulnerable, okay? We become very vulnerable to a culture of consumption and consumerism, okay? Because that's where the culture wants us. If you don't have a compelling reason to live, well, at least you can live for the weekend. And for young people in the room, thank you for being here, okay? And you're like, really don't want to be here? My parents maybe. For my students, like the most compelling narrative of their lives is this. What are you guys doing? That's it. What are you guys doing right now? What are you guys doing this weekend? I mean, like, that's it. What they look forward to is whatever that peer group is doing next. What are you guys doing? You guys know what, like, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Like, that's the emotion of this generational cohort. What are you guys doing? That's the only compelling thing. School, not very compelling. Maybe sports is compelling. Like, you're an athlete. You're really looking forward to, like, the next game, the next season. But our lives become flat. And what's interesting is, the culture is characterized by anxiety, but it's also characterized by a lot of drifting boredom. A lot of, like, drifting boredom. What's the point of any of this? So I hop on my phone and I say, what are you guys doing? And that's it. That's the most compelling story they got for their lives. What's everybody up to? And can I be included? And if I'm not included, then suddenly I feel rejected, and then my whole mental health is now dependent upon the health of that peer group. And that peer group isn't healthy because they're children, they're 13, 14, 15, 16. I mean, think about you guys when you were teenagers. Like, I think being a teenager, if that's the most compelling narrative to get me through my high school years is the mental health of my peer cohort, then obviously the mental health of our young people is fragilized, okay? Now, again, I said all that to say, not to shame any young people in the room or to get us older people to kind of go like, hey, young people. But when I talk to my students and I try to get them interested in the gospel, when I'm able to kind of evoke that sense of like, what am I here for? What is any of this for? Hey, and what are you guys doing? Is really the only thing I'm really looking forward to or interested in. They sense the one-dimensionality of that. Like they sense that, I actually kind of do need to like come up with a compelling story for my life. So that's the third thing. If your story gets real small, then you are like a mark for a consumeristic, consumptive culture. Because that's where they want you. They want you to have a small story, to just live for the next product or live for the next. And again, adults, we have the same thing, okay? So I'll say this. Jesus says, can I say something like difficult? I'll say this. My apologies if I step on your toes. But like Jesus says, it's difficult for a rich person to get into heaven. Okay, he said that, okay? And that's not to shame the rich, right? I don't think there's any sort of, but why is that? Like, why is it difficult for a rich person to get into the kingdom of heaven? Because I've achieved a degree of affluence, right? I'm solidly middle class. And here's why I think it is. Because we can purchase the next things we look forward to, right? So yeah, we're judging kids for looking forward to the next video game, but you're looking forward to your next ski vacation, or your next hunting trip, or your next girls' weekend. Does it make sense? Like, we have our own versions of this, where the only thing that's keeping me, so I'm spending all this time online, like, looking at new shotguns for dove hunting season, and I'm judging young people for being online too much. Does it make sense? We have there are adult versions of setting some experience or vacation or entertainment out in front of us, and that's what we look forward to, right? And here's the thing. It works until it doesn't work, okay? It works until it doesn't work. And what I mean by that is until you reach the worst day of your life. Suddenly, your bourbon collection, your new driver, the new whatever it is, suddenly those things seem really kind of small, okay? And that's my fourth reason. Remember, I reminded you this is the sad session. I'm just trying to really tighten the screws here to kind of feel like I think we're in trouble. Like, that's what I want to accomplish. That's the learning objective of this session. I think we're in trouble, okay? Because I think a lot of us, if we're fairly wealthy, feel like we can go from today till, right, old age, and we're going to skate real fast across thin ice, right? And hope that I never get that diagnosis. Does it make sense? We're skating real fast. We're going from entertainment to entertainment, okay? Ski vacation to ski vacation, golf round to golf round, hunting season to hunting season. I'm kind of leaning into the guys here. I apologize, okay? My wife has her own versions of this. Does it make sense? And we hope we can get enough of those in before the worst day shows up, okay? We're skating real fast across really thin ice. And hey, best of luck to everybody in the room. I hope you get there. Young people, as you choose your majors and your careers, I hope you get there. Marriages, I really hope you get there. But a lot of us in the room won't. The ice will crack, and there'll be a worse day. So psychologists call this derailment. It's a train metaphor, right? We're on the rails of happiness and joy and success. My friend, chose his want to be a doctor. We say yes at the engagement. We have that first child, right? And we're on those, railroad tracks, and we're heading towards a vision of flourishing. And you capture it different ways. Maybe it's the entertainments, but maybe it's the picture with everybody in the white shirts and the khaki pants on some beach. You're all in bare feet. That's whimsical, That's it. It's the picture. It's the Christmas photo you just took. And the letter you're going to write to friends and family telling you how you have an honor student and how talented your kid. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. That's the vision. And again, I hope you get there. I really do. But then, somewhere on the way to that far shore, there is the exposed infidelity and the divorce. There's the kid you got the kid that's an honor student, but there's the other kid that struggles with mental health issues, and you don't know what to do. Or you finally get in your job, like my friend, and you're a doctor 20 years in, and you're like, I'm deeply and profoundly unhappy. He had an indoor pool. Did you hear that? Indoor. Because he could afford it, and he thought that would at least take off some of the stress. Oh, and you're like, why is it indoor? I told you I was raised in Pennsylvania, okay? So you wouldn't do indoor pools, I think, in Amarillo, would you? No. But in Pennsylvania, if you want to swim, if you're a stressed out doctor and you're dying and you want to swim in the middle of December, he thought, I'll get an indoor pool and I can at least get home from my stressful day and I'll swim and I'll be happier. And he just realized he wasn't very happy. So derailment. I used to work in a psychiatric hospital, and it was inpatient, and so we had a lot of suicide attempts would come in. I worked on the day shift, and so you'd come in and you'd see the people who had attempted to take their own lives the night before, and they would be admitted. And I remember vividly. One of those stories was a gentleman who was an emergency responder to car accidents and people in emergency situations, an EMT, and so his job was deeply meaningful. He got up every day and he was excited about what he like me. I'm unhappy because I have to go teach stats. He woke up every day really motivated because his job was literally saving lives. Like he saved lives. He pulled people out of wrecked cars. He brought people back from the brink of death. And he looked back at the end of the day and was like, that's why I'm living, right? That's my purpose in life. But then he injured himself on the job. Hurt his back to where he couldn't do those things anymore. Couldn't carry people. Couldn't use the jaws of death to get people out of cars anymore. Injured his back. He could no longer do that job and became deeply depressed and then suicidal. Because his joy was contingent upon that job. And he was skating real fast across thin ice until one day the ice cracked. And then he had his story wasn't big enough to carry him over that vocational derailment. So that's the sad story I want to tell you. I'm trying to evoke in us a sense of why trying to pursue a joy of pleasure, a joy of fulfillment, a joy rooted in happiness is going to just, as I've described it, fragilize our mental health. We don't make very good choices about where this joy will come from. We make affective forecasting errors. Some of us chose well, but 30 years doing the same job, the hedonic treadmill sets in. Even in our marriages, we chose well. 30 years of marriage, there's a routine that settles in. The hedonic treadmill settles in. We come back to that baseline of dissatisfaction. We start getting restless again. If our joys get real small, we become targets for consumerism and consumption. And some of us can afford things that can keep us perpetually distracted from the existential vacuum that is at the center of our lives. One more entertainment, one more adventure, one more vacation, one more job accomplishment. And we chase and we chase and we chase. And maybe you get to the far side, but the fourth one is derailment. Who are you on the worst day of your life? Not the best day. Listen, the day you pose to your family for the Christmas photo, that's a good day. You know? First slope of the ski season, it's a great day. You know? Those are good days. That's not the issue that we're talking about. We're talking about when those things become stale, old, desperate, denial, repression, Band-Aids on a deep unhappiness. And then we look at a culture that is struggling from a mental health perspective and ask, like, what's wrong? I think these are some of the things. Now, this is not the only thing that's wrong with our culture, but these are some of the things. The last thing I will say, and to kind of pivot towards the sermon, is the way we've constructed our identities. In my book, I talk about what I call the superhero complex. This will be a fifth thing. So this is a bridging into the sermon. I call it the superhero complex because there was a podcast that came out a couple years ago called the Superhero Complex. Anybody listen to the podcast, the Superhero Complex? It's called the Superhero Complex because it was about a season in Seattle, okay, where people were dressing up like real-life superheroes, like in spandex with capes, like Batman and Robin, Superman. And they were patrolling downtown Seattle as real-life superheroes. That's what they called themselves. It was the real-life superhero movement in Seattle, right? And so the title of the podcast was like the superhero complex. Like who would do such a thing, you know? And I use it in the book to kind of describe how everybody has their own superhero complex. That we all have something we are deeply investing in that gives our lives purpose and meaning. And for some of us, it is vocational, right? You're very success-driven, very, very achievement-oriented, and that's what makes you special or unique. Just how you can go into the office and just kind of kick butt. Like, you're just good at what you do. And that could be from an elementary school teacher, you know? Like, you're the elementary school teacher, your pedagogy is just awesome, and you're crushing it. Or you could be a venture capitalist and just, you know, killing the market right now. Just good at what you do, okay? Some of it's like petty vanities. It's our attractiveness. You were fortunate to be born good looking, and you knew that, like in high school, that you were pretty, sexy, handsome, and so I don't know. You're working out, keeping that body looking great. You know, it's just a physical vanity that sets you apart from other people. Some of us, it's our brains. Everybody around you is stupid. You know, like these dumb people, you know, you're just smarter than everybody. You know, I don't know what it is. Some of it's your taste in music. Have you ever bumped into a music snob? Oh my gosh, they're insufferable. You know, they're just, you know, like, what are you listening to? What? You listening? I have some very judgy friends about music, you know. My wife is a bit of a Swiftie. She's a Taylor Swift fan. And that I've discovered, you know, that she's a very polarizing figure. And so I took my wife to the Eras tour because I'm a good husband. And you know, like, you know, I paid a lot of money for that, you know. I was telling her, like, sweetie, do we want to live a one-dimensional life? Let's not look forward to the era. Lang, I feel like you're looking forward to it too much. Like, don't we have to have deeper roots and a higher calling? Like this, it can't be all about going to this concert, sweetie, you know. And oh my goodness, my friends judge me hard for going to the Eras concert, 50-year-old men have hard opinions about pop music. They do, you know. They're like all Bob Dylan fans, anyway, my friends are something, anyway. Whereas I like to tell my students, everybody's a snob about something. Speaking to the preachers in the room, sorry, Mick and Greg and all you guys, like you get trained in Bible. I was a Bible major. You get trained in Bible, and you can't hear a sermon ever again, because every time you hear a sermon, you're up there like, that wasn't good. Like, I don't, they just didn't, too topical. They didn't exegete enough. Pastors or preachers, they're snobs, man. They're homiletic snobs. Yeah. And here's my point: is like it's some of it's your kids, right? You're not all that great, but your kids are really talented. They're the starting quarterback, or they're the honor student, or they get the lead in the musical, or they get to be the snow queen in the Nutcracker. Do you guys have ballet here in Amarillo? Has anybody been a part of the ballet world? Man, that's swimming with the sharks. The ballet world, which kid gets to dance the snow queen and oh my goodness, My wife's been exposed to that because she's a theater teacher, and a lot of her kids do ballet. So our kids become trophies to display to a world, to make ourselves, so that's the cape we put on, the success and the resumes of our children. That's why we love writing that very braggy letter during Christmas to send to our sister. Okay. Now you might be like, man, he's fishing, and I'm just trying to make everybody get on the hook. Okay? That's all I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make everybody feel like somewhat implicated in this situation as I wrap this up. Because here's the thing. On our worst days of our lives, it all seems really stupid. Really? You're judgy about Taylor Swift because I should be listening to Bob Dylan? Like, really? The size of your bourbon collection? Really? How much money you got in the bank? And some of you guys, again, have faced the worst day of your life. And you realize suddenly money really doesn't. The vacations really don't matter. It all goes away. And sometimes, sadly, it's only the worst day of our lives that can really pull back the screen on the deep emptiness and shallowness that is covering over our lives. And so, if that is not the route to take, the hedonic joy, the pleasant life, the happy life, the fun life, then what is a joy that can get you through the worst day of your life? And it's not going to be found in any of these things. It's going to be found in a bigger story. And that's going to be the subject of this sermon and this afternoon. So I know this is sad news. I really hope you come to the sermon, because otherwise you're going to be like really depressed. Like, how was that talk? Like, I don't know. I just felt really sad. I felt like he was very judgy. Right? I felt like he was very judgy, and I don't like that guy. I will turn to the happy news in the sermon, but today, and the reason why I wanted to say all this is because, one, I'm looking in the mirror. I want to be clear about that. I am looking into the mirror. But secondly, if you're a faith community that can see that sadness and that emptiness with compassion, and can speak words of hope into that, I think that's the evangelistic context. There is good news for this culture. So let's not get on social media and judge everybody. Let's say, hey, here's good news for that restlessness we're all feeling. And so again, if we can become good soul doctors, I think we have good news for the culture, and most especially ourselves. Okay, let's dismiss. I'll see you all shortly in worship service.